Hey, howdy. Welcome to Talk and Draw with Patrick Scullin and Travis Hanson, and today our special guest, Mike Morris.
Oh,
How you
my
doing,
hand's
Mike?
disappearing. My hand's disappearing. Hold on. Hi.
He's also a magician, in addition to being a great artist.
Woo! Uh, yeah, I had a green screen on stream one time, and it was nice. It was really inconvenient having it back at me, but my hands would not disappear like this. And
Uh,
that was very, very convenient.
Well, as long as you stay phased in the program today, we'll be fine. Um, Mike comes to us from the animation world. He's got a 14-year experience working for studios like he worked on The Simpsons, worked on Future Worm, DuckTales, Disney, DreamWorks, done a variety of publishing projects as well. Storyboard artist, character designer, awesome guy. So thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
and a very thick mustache and beard.
Yeah. I need to trim it again, I think. And I've known this Travis Hanson guy for what? Is it like 25 years or something like that?
Longer than that.
Oh, I'm
Really?
sorry. I'm sorry to hear
92.
that.
92. Oh, wow.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Oh man.
Mold. Mold.
Yeah, you guys are old, that's for sure. Not me.
Yeah, whatever.
So today we decided to bring Mike in to talk about character expressions and putting interesting facial expressions and emotion into characters. So Travis, you can kind of explain to us what we're going to draw, and then we'll get into our questions.
Well, today we're just going to draw detectives, and they're emotionless.
So that seems a little contradictory, but we'll make it work, right?
Oh,
We'll have fun with it each way.
I wouldn't say emotionless, but maybe a little bit more on the stoic side. It takes all kinds.
So
Yeah.
that's what we're going to draw today. We'll have fun with it like we normally do, and we'll talk shop. We'll see wherever the conversation takes us. And that means I have to share my screen, don't I?
Yep, you get to go first.
All right, I'm going to go first. All right. And as usual, I draw in Clip Studio Paint.
That's right. And you draw well, sir. And while you get warmed up there, let's kind of start off, Mike.
Yep.
What do you think is the key to drawing expressive characters? Why focus on it? What are some tips and tricks you might have for it?
To me, the real focus is observation. The more you're a student of life and the more you observe like different mannerisms that people have, the better you're going to be at, surmising expressions and like trying to come up with things that are more interesting. So like I just put out a video with Wacom talking about gesture drawing and performance in gesture drawing. And that was one of the things that I harped on over and over and over again was the idea of just being a student of your surroundings and of life. I think that's so important.
What does that look like for you? Do you like have a sketchbook? Do you people watch? What do you like to do?
I always people watch. I think it gets my wife's nerves sometimes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Out
Because
there
I'm like,
staring at people?
I'm just looking out the window all the time, when we're driving in places, looking at people running by, looking at, all the different.
And you're not creepy. I mean, I do the same thing.
Well, there's such a variety out in the world, especially where we live in California. There's a huge variety of different kinds of people, different shapes, different mannerisms, different colloquialisms. Because people behave differently even from city to city in some cases. Where you've got one of my favorite things to observe is actually people in their cars when they don't think they're being watched.
And they're picking their nose.
Well, there's always that, but there's the people that the car dancers. Those are always really fun to watch. The ones that just have that song that they have to dance to, and I get that. I've done that.
Well, they think they're having their little private performance, but people can see them, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like a false sense of security where you think you're alone, but you're not. You're with a ton of other people on the road. You know.
Sounds like a bad Tiffany song. You think you're alone now?
But you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually wonder sometimes if people watch me and I like sometimes talking to myself in my car on the commute. That's kind of embarrassing.
Well, you know what? Talking to yourself is one of the first signs of madness. So you really ought to get that checked.
I really had to get that checked on. So, where do you think, or maybe I should put it this way: what do you think about the eyes, and how do eyes carry that expression or that feeling of the character?
Well, I mean, the old expression is "eyes are the window to the soul," right?
Hmm.
And eyes are totally important. You know, take this large beastly man that Travis is drawing, for instance. What does his eyes say? Basically, there's to me they're saying, "I'm gonna murder you right now," and you don't even know about it. Like,
He's not paying attention.
No, he's not, because he's a detective. He's
Yeah,
looking
he's
at
a
some
really,
kind
really good one, apparently.
of.
he's the unperceptive detective.
Yeah, I like that.
I think he
Yeah, well,
rolled a natural one on his perception check for all the game tabletoppers out there.
That's right.
what about you, Travis? What do you do for observing life and picking up on real life expressions and character traits?
Well, I mean, I agree with Mike. You got to watch how people act and react and stuff like that, and especially, I mean, if you're dealing with animation, you're watching movement constantly happening. You know, when we deal with illustration, it's always a camera capture, and yet, I'll look at how people react to stuff, but I also like looking at photos, especially old black and whites, and I like watching old movies and stuff of that nature where I can really, look and go, because they exaggerated back then. They exaggerated the expression, and you can really see how it moves. Now, getting it into your piece, you definitely, I think, having that reference is important. Give him a little mustache, but you know, and that's kind of always been a struggle for me. It's just finding the right emotions for the characters and stuff, and being able to break away from having your set of 5 standard facial expressions. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, do you guys? I've seen different animators talk about having a mirror, and they're always like looking, trying to do wacky faces and stuff. What do you guys do to kind of push that out of those 5, cliches, I guess?
I look at photos. I honestly do. I spend a lot of time because I don't go outside anymore.
Why's that?
I don't think anybody else does either.
Dude, I lean into those cliches. Give me more cliches.
Do you?
No, I think it's a matter of experimentation. There's the famous lecture on creativity by John Cleese, and there's a lot of things in that I really subscribe to. And the first is giving ideas time to percolate, and not being satisfied necessarily with the first result. And sometimes the first result is the right one, but not always. So getting into where you're in that creative mode, that open mode of thought, I think that's really important to find that mode where you are more active in the play space of your brain. And I think just being able to stop and play for a little while and be able to rediscover what it is to just play around,
Right.
and goof around.
Well, I mean, here's something. You've worked on many different projects, and some of them I think was probably harder to put the facial expressions in than others. Or creating life. I mean, I think that there's a difference between The Simpsons and DuckTales. You can see the expressions, and I love the expressions in DuckTales. That's some of the best. But I mean, have you found that to be true, that it's sometimes harder depending on the project you're working on, or do you work with, or you just make it happen?
To me, I think it's more knowing the character and who the character is. And I think once you know the character, the expressions come a little bit more naturally, because you know how they were going to react. Like Future Worm, for instance, was a season 1 show, and that one I think was a little bit more difficult for me because I wasn't sure who the characters were at the beginning yet. I didn't know how they would react to different things. I didn't understand who they were quite yet. And the more I worked with them, the more I understood who they were and what they would do. And then that became a much more natural process.
Right.
So I think that the more into the character you are, as far as knowing who they are, you're in a little bit deeper with your knowledge of them. Then it comes more naturally.
Who's your favorite character to draw?
Oh,
Besides your own.
I've always been a big fan of Donald Duck.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to get onto DuckTales too, was because Donald Duck was on my bucket list of characters to work with.
That's awesome.
Any Donald scene I got was a treat.
Oh, that's very, very cool.
I mean, I even got to do some scratch for Donald Duck every so often when the occasion arose, which was fun to record scratch audio track.
So you mean like when you say scratch track, is that like a preliminary audio track?
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have a Donald Duck impression?
Yes, I do.
Let's hear it.
No.
He's under contract that he can't divulge it.
No, it's not under contract.
I'm teasing you.
Just embarrassing, Travis.
Well, that's what this thing's about.
Well, it's like when somebody finds out you speak a foreign language, you're like, say something to me in that language, and you're just like, whatever, dude. I'm not your dancing Pete to like order around.
I tell him
Duck.
I tell him that I can't because it would turn them on.
Okay.
Oh, that's surprising.
That's awfully presumptive as well.
This is a family show, Travis.
Yeah, but it stops him from asking.
Well, I'll do my Donald Duck. How about that?
Okay, you do it.
That's my Donald Duck.
Well done, Patrick. Well done.
My grandpa used to do a good Donald Duck, and I always tried to copy him. How about this? What do you think the hardest expression is to capture? Or what do you have trouble with?
Passiveness.
I think some of the hardest ones to capture are the ones that are really highly specific. When there's two ideas or two emotions going on at once, where the subtext of something is different than the actual expression.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. How do you approach that?
Oh, he's a vampire now. Look at that.
Well, why not? I mean,
sure. I mean, he could be a giant goon vampire. Why not? I don't know. It just goes back to like relying on fundamentals of acting. Like you have a character who is saying one thing and thinking another. I think those are more difficult because you're wrestling with that duality of ideas.
Yeah. Well, I do enjoy that in any kind of performance when there's a subtext, when the character's saying one thing but thinks something else. And I think it's even more difficult to capture in still images. In animation, I can imagine it's even more complicated trying to get that across.
It's actually less complicated because you don't have to cram everything into one panel.
right.
You can change it. and you can change it over time.
That's
So,
true.
I mean, I think in that way that it's actually a little bit less complicated than having to do it all in the one panel.
So in a situation like that, when you're preparing a cartoon, say DuckTales or something, is that something that comes across in the script, and then it's your job to capture the emotion and the scene? Do you get direction on that from the directors, or
Oh,
how does that work?
always direction from directors. I mean, they have a very specific, thing in their head sometimes, and your job is to try and figure that out. Whether you do it successfully or not, sometimes that's a matter of debate. But, you do your best to get the vision of what's in the scripts and what the emotion, the overall emotion they're trying to get across. Because, like, in our jobs, it's such a collaborative environment, such a collaborative craft, that sometimes you have to interpret what people are like trying to get at.
Hmm.
And sometimes it works out, and sometimes you have to kind of go back to the drawing board. They say storyboarding is reboarding a lot of the time,
So revisions and redos.
all the time.
Let's jump into you. Let's see what you're working on as I continue on this. So we're gonna switch screens
Okay.
and jump into Mike's screen.
All right. Well, I wanted to be different from Travis, so
Thank
I'm
you.
using Sketchbook Pro. I love me some Clip Studio Paint, but yeah. So this is what I'm working on right now. Is the old like Joe Friday style. And
Oh,
then
I like that.
Yeah.
he's got his badge, or whatever. Let's do that in a different color so it looks a little bit more.
I like how clean it is.
So
He's got his badge.
So with someone with your experience, do you just have a library of potential characters in your mind, or do you still use reference when you're building characters? How do you like to work?
I like to work a lot of different ways. It just depends on what the needs are of that particular thing that I'm trying to do. Like in this case, all I really did was start, like, for this Joe Friday character, I just started with this, just 2 lines that sort of evolved over time, and you just erase and, draw really light. And like, I often, that's one of my cliches, is actually this expression.
Kind of the underset eyes, kind of angry.
Just that very flat, sort of expression like this.
That's the mirror to the soul, right?
The mirror to this soul. If you're implying this, the mirror to my soul.
I'm not implying anything.
That was an implication on its own, Travis. Who do you think you're fooling, man?
No one actually.
So, like, I like the idea of shape language. Like, shape language is always really a good way to think about things when you've got different shapes, for different things. You've got your very stoic characters that tend to be a little bit more of the blocky variety, very up and down, very, you could do the classic Grecian scholar where you're draping them with something, but they're essentially, like a block of some kind.
I like that. So you're saying that the silhouette of the character, the basic anatomy, is rock hard, block, stiff,
Right.
unfeeling.
Not necessarily unfeeling, but steady.
Okay.
Steady and reliable, I think, is another way to put it. Blocks tend to be characters that are more reliable. I mean, if you can go, you don't need to go any farther than the Disney movie Moana, right?
Right.
Maui is like one big giant block.
Yeah.
and he has that shape changing ability, but that big block is what gives him this presence of strength, you know, because he's this big giant block of a man. It's like this, you know, and he has that wild hair, which gives him another shape language too. Because these curvy wild shapes have a much more playful connotation to them. You talk about like round characters and provide some sort of like comedy relief, like the Igors of the world, and some of those little like lackey dudes, like who's that guy from Casablanca? Peter, I can't remember his last name.
Oh, yeah.
The one who's always like, "Yes, master, you know that."
Right. Oh,
And that going back to the ego, Peter something. Gosh, that's so embarrassing not to know that off the top of my head.
I don't. I wouldn't be embarrassed. I don't know that either. It's all good.
Well, I'm embarrassed for you, Travis.
That's okay. The older I get, the less I care about things.
Well, that's good. That's good.
well,
By the time you're really old, just nothing, like a nihilist at that point. Nothing.
Yeah, sitting on my lawn, yelling for kids to get off of it.
well, something you said earlier was, entering that play space, and I'm kind of thinking that kind of unlocking the shape language and just kind of letting things evolve is part of that, right? Where you're not you're not planning ahead necessarily. You're just kind of letting things develop.
Well, I don't know. For me, I like to work in iterations, where you do something, you just essentially vomit out like whatever is in your brain, and then you go through and analyze it and see like, where is this working, where is it failing, where is it where do I feel like I'm responding to this, and where do I feel like I don't care.
Right. And how long does it, take you to get to that point for you?
For me, depends on how motivated I am that day. It's a varying length. I can't say that there's any particular size of it also depends on deadline too, honestly, because sometimes you're going to have a little bit shorter of a time to work on things than you would like, and
Right.
at that point it's like, well, it's good enough. But when I'm just doing stuff for myself, it's a more organic process than how long does it take? Because it could take a long time, and it could not. It could be something that you just like nail immediately, and there's other times you're just struggling with it, so it's sort of hanging out there for a bit.
I find that's kind of the challenge of any kind of creative process is sometimes you luck out and it comes easily. Other times it just takes more time for something that you think, oh, that should be pretty quick. But
And everybody has those like sort of stinky drawing days, right? Where no matter whatever you put on the page, it's going to suck.
yeah.
Like, and then other days you're just like, I can do no wrong, and those are really fun days.
Yeah, when it's just clicking and just feel really awesome about it.
Well, I've got a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
As you you have these, how has animation, because you're not the first person to talk about the whole shape, and that seems to be a very unique trait almost to animation, because I don't hear it used much in illustration. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How much has that really influenced your style and your work?
Yeah, I think it's shaped my work immensely. you know, because you have certain archetypal shapes that you can kind of use for your casting, I guess I would say, where you're like looking to have a character be a certain way, and then that shape language can accentuate that sort of idea. So I think, yeah, it impacts my work rather greatly.
And how long did it take you to start to learn and understand and comprehend how to use that theory well?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out how to use it, you know, entirely well. You know, people. I always balk at the idea when people say, "Yes, I've mastered this thing."
I didn't say
Well,
mastered.
yeah, but like, you know, it's implied that if you know the skill that you've mastered it.
Right.
So I don't know. For me, it's going to be a lifelong endeavor, and I'm going to do, you know, drawings that I love and drawings that I hate and drawings that I just will no longer be able to look at and should be burned, or you know, that, I don't know. So I think it's just something that I think continually evolves as you gain more experience in your life, you know, and you actively seek experiences too. Like, I feel like as a society right now, we're incredibly voyeuristic, and we are, you know, at this in this area where we're sort of passively experiencing the experience, like by proxy, the experiences of others,
Right.
which is both good and bad. I think sometimes it's nice to know what you're getting into before you endeavor to take on something. You know, like I wouldn't like go pick up blacksmithing tomorrow if I hadn't watched, you know, at least the first season of Forged in Fire. And now I'm on like what, it's like season 7 or something like that. And now the idea of doing it is much more intriguing to me because at least I understand it a little bit better. So in that way, I think it's great. And then in other ways, I think it's not beneficial because I could just be that person that's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't want to actually experience it. Or like, maybe it's just because I'm a child of growing up in the 80s, but the idea of watching other people play video games to me is so foreign. Like,
I struggle with
Right.
that one too. I'd rather just be the one that plays.
yeah, right. I mean, I can understand, like, because I've been a big fan of the Critical Role stream for quite some time, and that I can understand because it's like a
It's a show.
it's a collaborative storytelling thing that you can really get behind in a lot of ways. But to me, when I'm watching just somebody, you know, play a video game, unless that personality is super entertaining, it's a little harder for me to wrap my head around.
Right.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
it's bad, it's just-
The whole Twitch thing is just, I don't get. I do feel like the cranky old man that's like, what?
And I think you make a really good point, though. I mean, we are in a state as a society where we spend a lot of time watching someone else live the dream that we quote want to live,
yeah.
or we want to do or experience. And I think it is kind of a little bit, it takes away our drive to go out and experiment and try new things or figure things out. And, you know, I don't know how good or bad that is for us, but I'll tell you, I like to do jams, to not like music jams. I like to make the actual food, and it's an art. I didn't realize how complicated and unique it was until I actually started doing it. Now I love it. You know, it's just a nice stress release. But you know, I think that you've made a very great point about um, just getting out there and trying it or exploring and watching how people react or do things.
Well, and I think that comes across in a lot of art nowadays, where people aren't discovering who they are as artists. They're sort of doing the the otaku thing, you know. That's the like Hayao Miyazaki is saying, you know, things like otaku are ruining the Japanese animation industry. People that are looking at their heroes and essentially copying that, you know, and not looking to their own experiences, not pulling who they are from the depths of their lines and colors.
So what is otaku? I'm not familiar with that.
Uh, let me see. You know what, Patrick? Now you got me looking up things on the internet. Go
to Patrick's.
I don't know how.
We're gonna go to Patrick's screen right
Yeah,
now.
go to Patrick's screen. Go to Patrick's screen. I don't want to get this wrong because somebody on the internet's going to be like, well, that's not the definition. Because that's how people on the internet talk.
All right, let me pull up my screen then. But I love what you've done there, Mike. Those characters are fun.
Thanks, man.
I'd like the I don't know if he's like a
Peter Lorre. That's his name.
Peter Lorre. That's the one.
I knew it had come to me.
Now, what does he have to do with animation?
The most inopportune moment, like when the moment has passed completely. That's when stuff like that comes to light.
Oh, I was just thinking, wow, shiny object.
Squirrel. I before I cut your screen off, I really dig the cowboy guy too. The
Shaft. That's an afro, dude. That's not.
Oh, I was thinking that was like a sombrero or something.
No. That's can you dig it?
Got it. I see it now with the turtleneck and the sweater. Nice.
Because I mean, if you're talking about detectives, there's a few that are high on the list.
That's awesome.
So.
Okay, guys, you'll be underwhelmed when you see mine here. There we go.
It's just a blank screen.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Well, look at that. You put in a girl.
Yeah, she's double crossing him. I don't know.
Did she stab him?
She's got a knife to his neck.
I thought you stuck it in his neck.
Are girls not common on this podcast?
Oh no, we have a whole bunch, but it was just I didn't expect him to.
It wasn't what you expected.
No, usually he only draws one person. This was a double feature for us, and it's been quite nice.
Well, Patrick,
yeah.
All about equal opportunity. Is that?
I don't know. I just riffing here. I thought have the ne'er-do-well detective double crossed by the sultry lady that comes to hire him, like in those war films, But
I like it. I like your facial expressions.
I was kind of in my mind. I was kind of thinking Don Knotts. I don't know why, but it's not quite.
Oh, that's a great movie. Do you remember that one? Private
Well,
Eyes.
There's so many.
It was him and Tim Conway, and they played detectives.
Oh yeah.
That's an old 80s reference, sorry.
Well, I was thinking, earlier than that probably.
No, it was 80.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking like The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, or I don't know. Don Knotts is a great character face actor as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he's definitely unique.
One of those faces that can
only a mother could love.
Yeah, that only a mother could love. But could pull off all kinds of emotion in his acting just with his face.
Oh yeah.
Jim Carrey's like that kind of thing.
There's some people that are like abnormally expressive with their faces, and that's always a treat.
Well, and personally, I've always enjoyed drawing people more than stuff. I don't know if you guys have a preference, but I've always liked drawing faces and bodies and characters. I don't like drawing landscapes or vehicles or other things like that.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I've always struggled with drawing vehicles.
Gotta stop smoking. Sorry.
Yeah, Travis, you got Corona or something? What's going on there, buddy?
No, there's no Corona over here.
No, Corona is about 30 miles south of you.
That's right. I have water and chocolate chip cookies. Oh.
So, if you were a new artist trying to hone your skills, what suggestions do you guys have for building that library of expression or emotion, things to put into your work?
Well, I would say go outside and get some more experience in your real life, but it's
But
kind of
can't anymore.
Kind of hard right now. So that
So go
that
back
comment's
to the
right out the
voyeuristic.
way.
Yeah, go back to the voyeuristic life because you can't go outside.
Yeah.
Watch lots of YouTube.
The government says you can't go out there right now.
That's okay. So go find some voyeur, well, not voyeuristic, but
Look out your window and get some binoculars.
But I think,
Rear window stuff happening.
I tell kids all the time, use Google. If you're looking for a quick reference, especially when you're dealing with backdrops and buildings and locations and events, I like to travel, but I don't always get to travel. And we live in a day and age where there's so many pictures that we can utilize.
Yeah.
So much reference is out there for us that hasn't, it is, you couldn't ask for a better time to be able to grab reference.
Did you have an image morgue for, in the old days, Travis?
Yeah, I actually had, I would take National Geographics and cut them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do that too.
I'd find all the pictures that I loved, and I would cut them up, whether it was cultures or races or faces or expressions or light, dark. National Geographic had the best pictures ever. And I can remember having these thick notebooks, and I think I still have them somewhere. Just because I just remember utilizing those, especially when I was working on Bean. I wanted it to have certain effects or feelings or appeals. And man, I would just pick up a new National Geographic and go to town. Now I don't have to. I just go to Google and I go, oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I that's what I use Pinterest for.
Well, Pinterest is great for finding different things because somebody's already gone through and made a collection of something that you might want to look at,
Oh yeah.
It's like curated almost.
Yeah, so I do have all my Pinterest boards are like reference boards. Just pull stuff that
Sure.
I can
I
look
bet
at.
you have a nice Pinterest account, Patrick.
Yeah, it's full of all kinds of home decor and stuff like that too.
Dude, don't knock Pinterest. Pinterest is.
I'm not knocking it. I was just saying that I bet
No,
Patrick.
you were implying. You were implying again, and casting aspersions that Patrick is like some millennial young mother.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
A new
I never
recipe.
said that. Are you?
Travis, you know what you said. You know what you did.
Yeah, my how to throw a good birthday party for a 5-year-old. That's my Pinterest board.
I'm sorry. Did I hurt your feelings, Patrick?
You always hurt my feelings, Travis.
It's a delicate man here.
Yeah, I may look all manly and burly, but I'm sensitive in the side.
Yeah, on his left side mostly.
Yeah. Actually, I have
Where the
sciatic.
plastic plate is.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep.
The metal one made him forget who he was for half an hour every time somebody turned the microwave on.
But if it gets dented, that's just going to mess up the part.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much about you right now that it's beyond anything.
that both of us have watched Christmas Vacation an inordinate amount of times.
That's one of those movies that I watch every year.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good question, or to look at. As you work on your own projects or you work on other projects, How much are you influenced by things that media that you've seen before, or jokes or expressions, and you go, I want to go back to that. I mean, even, listening, there's moments where I'm sitting there going, I'll draw a picture and then I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, wait a second, that's definitely something from Ghostbusters or something from Stand By Me or something, I can see where the correlation of what has made me as an artist, from the movies and stuff that I've watched or the books that I've read, kind of seep their way in.
I don't know if that's something you can totally avoid, especially now with media being as easily accessible as it is. I don't know. I just think it goes back to trying to find your own point of view. Where your shots or your choices compositionally say say a little bit more about who you are and what you like and what you don't like than anything else. I think, and it's hard. It's hard to get to that point where you're that self-aware.
Yeah, I think we can't help it. We have to be kind of open to the idea that no idea is truly original. It's been done before somehow, but we have to riff on it. That's the way I like thinking about it.
Nothing's original. They're about to remake The Princess Bride.
No.
Yeah, I read that this morning.
They can't do that.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
I agree. But I also think that, and one thing that I see that has been disheartening is the fear to try something new.
Oh, for sure.
To try something different. And I think that it is a problem that Hollywood and publishing faces. I can remember when Harry Potter first came out, and it was like, wow, let's write about a school of wizards, and it was really a kind of a unique idea. And then all of a sudden, every other book series that came out is about a camp or a school or a competition, or the originality was all gone completely. And even now, watching what has to be remade, there's a rumor going around right now that they want to remake 7, 8, and 9 of Star Wars, and put what was originally done by Disney kind of in a mirrored universe, however they want to call it, and like it never happened because of the way.
Hey, I'd be up for that.
Now, I would be up for that as well, but it's just
there's a thing to be said for correcting your mistakes, but
But when we're looking at it, though, you've got this whole since the last, I think, 10, 15 years, it's all been remakes. How do we remake this? How do we remake something that was a classic? And so it's a fear of actually trying something new or unique.
Well, the thing is, like Brad Bird explained it this way: Hollywood is like a big dumb shark that eats money. Okay, and it'll always go where the money is, and as long as people keep patronizing that stuff, it's going to keep happening. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to see original content, stop going to these remakes. Like, don't give them the time of day. You know what I mean? If you want to see something that's been dredged up from the 70s or 80s, by all means, keep going. But if you want to see more original content, that's what you should patronize.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that all remakes are bad, because I really enjoyed Ocean's 11, but 99% of them are.
Well, the thing is, it's like this sort of fear to take a chance, and I can understand, from the concept of, I am a high-powered businessman and I have to turn a certain amount of profit for this company, otherwise my career is going to tank, or I just will, get into a position that I really want. But that it sort of the default position of an executive is just, hands covering their backside. And that I think is part of the biggest problem there, is just that it creates a culture of not wanting to take a chance, not wanting to do something that could potentially fail. And I think that the new exec, I read a little bit about him, is Jeff Shelley, I want to say, but that might be somebody that I already kind of know. But I'm just, anyways. So I'm there was a story about him like really, pissing off Quentin Tarantino when he was pitching. I think it was pitching a Hateful Eight, and he went into the room. He's like, "Well, I want to do this on, because he's a super cinephile, and he's like, I want this on 70 millimeter everything, and I want this, this and this and this." He's like, "Well, what about you release it on iPhones?" And he's like, "I'm gone," and like just totally was out from that point. And I think that's sort of the renegade spirit that I think we need as far as from content creation point of view, is somebody who's just like, yeah, well, let's I see people are doing all this. I think we're going to take it in a different direction. We're going to go to where people aren't going at the moment.
Do you think that's possible?
I don't know what's possible anymore. Because media is becoming a place where there is so much need for content because there's so many eyeballs consuming, and they're competing with all kinds of different other types of media besides just visual television and things like that. You've got games, I think the game space is probably where some of the most creative work is being done right now, because gamers have that mentality where they don't necessarily want to just be fed on sequel after sequel. They're
Right.
looking for that next new cool game mechanic. They're looking for, I mean, you can, I think you look no farther than, some of those games like Fortnite and such, where they were really, really super popular for a while, and then something else came out like Apex Legends or something like that, and it was like, all right, see ya. And they go off to somebody else. So Fortnite's having to come up with something new every so often to keep people interested in what they're doing.
But they're even still rehashing. I just saw the new skin that came out for Fortnite. It was Captain America.
And that's super dope, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is super dope, but at the same time, it's not new storyline. It's not new content. It's not new.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet, we go, oh, Captain America, woohoo! I can be him. I can play that character, and now you'll have 700 Captain Americas running around in one game. So
it's true.
Well, it feels like in terms of mass media, it's probably not going to happen, but maybe with independence or whatever is where more of that exploration can happen.
Yeah. All right, so now we need to come up with a detective-based thing that's absolutely wholly original on stream.
Well, I was thinking maybe you could do a detective sloth who really just doesn't care, doesn't want to get up or solve any crimes. He just sits there.
That could be interesting.
Maybe not.
But the idea of nothing ever happening
ouch.
in there kind of throws me off.
I don't know. That kind of worked for Seinfeld. I guess it was a show about nothing. So the
Travis
anti-mystery.
does put out some rather Seinfeldish vibes.
I do not have a bed underneath my desk.
I always wanted one of those.
When I was in school, one of my friends didn't want to, pay for a place to live. So he slept inside of his cubicle, and you'd see every morning as you walk by 2 feet sticking out the curtain from his cubicle from where he was sleeping. Yeah.
So what
One of the
advice?
most interesting people. Seriously, the guy was such an original. I don't think I've ever met like a person as original as he was. I'm not going to mention the name, but this was a guy who was just eclectic. It's the only way I can really describe him. And he was super fun to hang out with and just watch him operate. It was just
there you go, back to people watching.
such an original personality that I don't know if the world will ever see his like again.
So maybe you should do a story based on that personality.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to sully or not do it justice, because he's one of those people that like you honestly couldn't predict what he was gonna do next. So in that situation, I'm kind of like it gives me pause to try and take on that level of I don't want to say randomness, but that's really the only thing I can think of.
So, Mike, here's a question for you.
Yes,
You know,
what's the
you have
question?
young people that want to go into animation and draw and such. And I know we talked about looking at, you know, observing people and watching things and stuff. But what books and stuff would you recommend for young artists to pick up to start learning from?
That's so 20th century,
Mm.
Travis. Books.
Shut
What
up.
do you mean?
You're a teacher. You should
What?
bite your tongue.
What YouTubers? What Twitch channels? What Snapchatters? Sorry.
Now you just sound like ancient, dude. What's the YouTubers happening today?
He sounds more like I'm waiting for him to go. So, what MySpace account do you want to go to?
Sorry, I stepped on your.
Back in the day when we had this thing called the internet, back before it got put directly into your brain.
Let's see your screen, by the way, Travis.
What, my screen?
Yeah.
All right. I started drawing something else. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm so bad about like following different creators and stuff on YouTube, and I don't think there's anybody that I like necessarily follow and hang on every word. I think it's more along the lines of I'll find content that I find interesting in the moment.
So there you go for the one sketch.
Aha! Where'd the mustache go? No mustache.
Yeah, you changed the
took
guy's
it off.
face.
I did. I took them both. I was looking at it going, I want to change it. So I changed it. And now
you have every right to.
That's right. And
no, you don't.
And now I'm working on another piece. So
we're getting lapped, Patrick.
I'm used to it now.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking, of that one scene in Captain America 2 where he's running around.
On your left.
On your left. So here it is, on your left. But going back to that, I know that there's some great books out there that there are, and people still read. So actually look at. What would be some of the ones that did you learn from, or what are some, or did you just pick it all up from the internet?
No, I have a nice little library of books here. I have, let's see, Animator Survival Kit, The Illusion of Life, Drawn to Life by Walt Stanchfield, which is a really great book.
I have that one. That one's fantastic.
Composing Pictures by Don Graham. That's a quintessential work that I need to finish getting through. Let's see. I've got a lot of like the art books from Disney films, and The Art of Drew Struzan.
My favorite.
One of the great, if not the greatest, movie poster artist of all time.
I thought you didn't read books, Patrick.
Oh, I'm old school.
So, I mean, there's so much good art in there. One of the things that I think that is helpful is looking at, some of the stuff on various sites like ArtStation and everything like that. But I think one of the things that happens in there is everybody is so complimentary of one another that they get sort of blinded to flaws in artwork sometimes, and everybody's got them. But or the artwork all tends to
look the same.
Yeah, or have that same sort of tenure to them. And not to knock the skills of a lot of these really awesome Chinese artists that are coming out of these various schools, but a lot of their artwork, especially the fantasy artwork, all looks virtually identical.
Like from a Final Fantasy game.
Yes, exactly.
Because they're drawing what's popular in their, in their field.
In their sphere of influence, yeah, and that's fine. You can absolutely say, I can do this. I like doing this. This is one of my favorite things. But at the same time, I think people are missing out on a lot of their own individuality when they do such things.
So how would you encourage someone to find that, to create their own individuality?
I think you just need to take a hard look at, and be honest with yourself. Like, I don't know. I think it's one of the hardest things to do as an artist is getting down to who and where you are. What do you like? What do you jive with? Like, what is the type of experience you want people to have as they are looking at your artwork? I don't know. And it's extraordinarily difficult thing to do, but I think it's well worth the time. I'm still trying to do it myself, like getting down to where I am and not just being a slave to my influences.
So what would be, what are your influences?
Obviously, Disney stuff is a huge influence on me and has been for quite some time. Comic books, I think, have been a huge influence on me. Again, child from the 80s, you got all of those very, very popular things. I grew up watching like He-Man and a lot of the fantasy stuff, I think, has been very influential to me. Travis, we talked about playing D&D before, and I feel like that is a huge exercise in storytelling.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm a big proponent of that.
I mean, and this collaborative storytelling where, as a dungeon master, you are having to react to stuff that you didn't necessarily anticipate. And I think that's one way that I'm finding that gets me into a storytelling mode that I more can find myself, like how would I interpret this character reacting to this thing? And I don't know. I think in some ways, in that space, you sort of find yourself.
Right. Do you have any specific artists that have influenced you over the years that you really just kind of gravitate to?
Travis Hanson.
Shut up. I am not on that list, and I am okay with that.
Oh, is this where the character is fishing for compliments?
No.
Is that what that is?
No. It has nothing to do with me.
He looks like that's what he's fishing for. That was.
No.
Oh, what an opportune joke.
Yes, it was. I mean, for me, like I look at some of my influences have been Sergio Aragonés, Stan Sakai.
Oh yeah.
I look at Richard Witters, who is one of the top D&D illustrators and a good personal friend. I look at Bill Stout, artist and storyboarder, or for me, they're illustrators, Windsor K. These are people that have totally morphed where the direction of my art has going. Even Bill Watterson, which I'm a huge fan of.
Oh yeah. He's definitely one of my big influences too. Eric Goldberg, the animator, Ollie Johnston, Joe Grant. Let's see, Jim Lee was a big influence for a long time when I was super into comics. Let's see, there's more than I can mention that I can even think of off the top of my head, because I know I've been influenced by a lot of different people. A lot of those old Disney folks, I think, have brought such a tremendous artistry to their craft that I couldn't help but being influenced by it.
Yeah, I've been watching the Merry Melodies, or Silly Symphonies?
Silly Symphonies?
Yeah, and I'm sitting there watching them going, as crazy as they are, you know, and the art is so, it feels very, it's not what I normally would watch, but I'm going, these guys started this. They're the ones that created it, you know, and built a lot of the techniques that are used today.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some of those guys like Bill Teitla or Vladimir Teitla, excuse me, or Freddie Moore, you know, Norm Ferguson, those precursors to the Nine Old Men. I mean, you know, they talk about, you know, when they were all studying it, this was absolutely new to everybody. Nobody knew how to do it. And so you got like people going on, there was a story about Bill Teitla. They were just out for a good time on, you know, a boat to go whale watching or something like that, just, you know, on their own time. And Bill's got like a tie and he's holding it up and watching it flap in the wind and saying, hey, look at this, man. You know, look at the way that this thing moves around. Like that was like life, you know, for these guys.
Right.
And that was, you know, both an art form and a tremendous passion.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, to be on the ground floor, kind of inventing and creating all together. What a legacy, right? They've left behind.
That's where I think like the VR space is really shining right now, because it's going through that same sort of birthing process. Nobody knows entirely what it is or what it's even capable of yet as technology changes. But I think that's where another big artistic front is happening in our lifetime. And I think you've got people like Goro Fujita who's doing like fantastic things in that space, like really blazing trails, you know?
Yeah. And that's where I that kind of stuff does make me feel old, because it's like, wow, I don't even know how to engage it.
Well, here, I'll show you, Patrick. So first you take a headset similar to this.
Whoa.
You put it on your head like a so. And then you totally disregard everything else that's around you and scroll over stuff for a good half an hour.
Where do you put in the quarter?
Seriously, dude? Seriously, the quarter?
Wow.
Where does the cartridge plug in?
Oh, Patrick. Oh, Patrick.
I have to apologize for my friend.
I didn't realize that you were such a Luddite. Where's your Amish beard, man?
It's coming along just fine. It's
raise a barn after this or something.
Yeah.
Well,
I gotta go chop some wood here pretty soon. So,
well, we want to jump back to see what other people are doing, so we're gonna jump back into Mike's.
Yep.
All right. So let me stop sharing.
Okay.
All right, it's all yours, Mike.
Okay.
And you know, in our remaining minutes here, it'd be nice if before we started, you did show us some other character stuff. I wonder if you'd want to share any last minute tips on character design or character expressions. You can do it too.
Well, yeah. Here's what I've been working on with my stuff.
That's
and then
great.
It started like a new Inspector Clouseau style thing, but we'll go to the content that sort of sparked a lot of this.
I love these guys. They're so different and so unique. They're great.
Thanks, man. They all have that sort of big underswept eye, you know.
Hey, here's a question for you, Mike.
Yeah.
What's the hardest thing that you've had to learn in your career?
The hardest thing I've had to learn in my career.
To love.
Geez, you make me sound like I'm emotionally stunted or something, Patrick.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. It's just like
it's the meds talking. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Usually a lot nicer.
Yeah.
No one's gonna want to be on this now because it's like,
I
oh,
don't.
crap, Badger's gonna make
I'm
fun
gonna
of
harass him. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna get mocked for a merciless half an hour or so. I don't know the thing that has made what's the hardest thing that I've had to learn.
It's a deep question.
Yeah, it is a really deep question. I'm trying to come up with a suitable answer. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the hardest thing I've had to learn is, but artistically or just as I operate in this space.
How about? I mean, it could be both, or
Good communication is something that I think I've had issues with in the past.
okay.
Where, just working with other people, sometimes I have not been the best communicator. Working on that though. Let's see. I think, going back to our previous conversation about influences, just figuring out what influences were ones I wanted to ingest and what I didn't want to ingest.
So being able to discriminate good influences over bad, or
Yeah, sure. I would say that. Yeah, being able to take what is great about some artwork, but not necessarily incorporating it to where I'm copying it. And I spent a lot of time copying. I'll make no bones about that. Trying to recreate the work of Disney masters and trying to replicate their drawings and whatnot. And you do learn a lot from that sort of stuff. I can't say that hasn't, been unhelpful. But the problem is that when it becomes a thing unto itself, that's when you have a problem. Like when the chasing of that particular drawing becomes more than the educational experience, you're not learning the real guts of it. You're not learning why that person did the line that they did, or what they what the thought process were behind it. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with the works of Maurice Noble, right?
Yeah, I
so.
did.
I think so.
So he wrote a book called The Noble Approach. And one of his big lamentations in that, in the foreword of that, was that people were trying to copy his artwork. And he's like, I don't want people to copy my artwork. I want people to understand my approach. Like that was his thing. But how does Maurice Noble approach making art? Because let's be honest, his stuff was some of the most wild and inventive design work in all those Looney Tunes cartoons. I mean, at least in my opinion. But of course, I'm fairly squarely in the Chuck Jones camp when it comes to the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes stuff, because I thought the combination of him and Mike Maltese and Maurice Noble was just, visual poetry. But yeah, he says he's talking about how to get people to understand how to approach it and not copy it verbatim, like to understand the process of making art and not the how do I describe this? To understand the real method behind it and not just the line work. How to create yourself, not to copy what's already been done.
Kind of makes me think of like difference between like a good meal and fast food kind of thing, where you can get the look right, but you don't really have the underlying quality.
Which are you considering higher quality?
The original.
Which is the original, the fast food or the?
No, like Maurice is the well-made meal, but then copiers are kind of the fast food version.
Sure.
I don't know. You can let go of that metaphor. It's fine. I'm hungry. It's almost lunch.
I did. I let that metaphor go a little bit a while ago. When you started it.
Well,
no, I get what you're saying though. Like you have this the idea of a hamburger, right? You can get a hamburger at any number of different places.
Yeah.
You can go to McDonald's, you can go to In-N-Out, you can go to Whataburger, you can go to White Castle, and they're each going to give you a different experience. And you go to like Gordon Ramsay restaurant or something like that, and it's an entirely different experience. You
Yeah.
can get the same sort of thing and have varying degrees of quality.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well,
I get your metaphor there.
I think, it also comes down to if you spend your entire life chasing what's popular, chasing a certain style that's popular at the time,
Mhm.
then all you do in your career is chase, and it wears you out. You're constantly, what's the next big thing? What's the next big thing? And your motivation and focus is completely different. Whereas when you look at how do I improve myself and stand apart as an illustrator, being influenced by other creative properties, then you actually grow and you develop and you become your own thing. And in the long run, I think your stability as a creator and an illustrator has a lot more lasting appeal than if all you do is chase what's the next big thing at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, you look at people like Ronald Searle, right, who really had a very individualized way of looking at the world, and then all the people who just sort of tried to copy him, um, going back to Jim Lee, even, when he hit the scene in the '90s for animation, like everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like some of the most beautiful work I've ever seen." And then you had this whole cavalcade of copycats that came after him,
Yeah.
where everybody wanted to have that style and be able to do that kind of work because it was so popular. But they never, some people started in that tradition and then broke out of it and quickly sort of formed their own way of looking at the world. But then you've got guys like who's it? Who's the guy that did the Max? He did
Sure.
Pit for years.
Yeah, yeah, and
Dave Neon or something like that.
I think so. We're actually going to talk to a huge fan of his next week.
Cool. But like when his stuff came out, I was like, wow, this is different. This is interesting to look at. I mean, some of it like borderlined on the grotesque even, but that was part of the charm of it. And so I think there's actually, to be honest, very, very few really truly original voices out there.
You
And
know,
because people don't take the time.
well, and I find that like in cartooning, it's the same thing. There's a lot of influence. You can see Bill Watterson's influence all over the place. I'm influenced by it. I can see it in my own work. You can see there's also a lot of European illustrators that are quite different, that have their own unique little voice that's pretty amazing. It's just you got to look for it. But we live in a day and age where we're so used to working with the formula of what's going to get me seen, what's the popular thing at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and you know it's hard for people to break away from that. It's one of the reasons why when you go to a convention, you see rows and rows of nothing but superhero print heads. It's because they're afraid to try their own thing. They're afraid to try something new. They're afraid to go, okay, how do I develop something that's unique, that's me, instead of making that quick buck for a head, which eventually they flood the market and the market crashes on itself because of that. Prince died about 2 years ago because of that.
Well, and who says that you're not going to be the next big thing if you do something of your own
Yeah,
creation?
you never know.
And it just goes back to taking a chance on what you love and knowing who you are and what you like.
I like him a lot. That's a great detective down there.
Thanks,
Yep.
man.
Well, and I think that's a good place to kind of start wrapping up, you guys. That be yourself. Don't be afraid to take a chance on yourself.
Oh, hey, Patrick, do you still want to look at that PDF?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this was a show that I had been developing for some time. Well, me and my brother-in-law, and a lot of this stuff was sort of based on our middle school experiences in some way, shape, or form. At least that was the inspiration of it, taken in part from the fantasy of something cool, and then the reality of our lives.
You didn't have a mustache in junior high, I don't remember.
No, I didn't, but I I did have something of one of those like peach fuzzy things that I was mercilessly mocked for not wanting to shave off. Because I thought it was cool, and so that was one of the things where this came about. Where this kid has this very visible sign of maturity, but is still not catching up. The rest of his body hasn't quite caught up yet. But this is the Polka, who is a middle school detective, and we had talked a little bit about having that, when you get into middle school, having that facade sort of that you espouse in a lot of ways, that everybody has this idea of who other people are expecting them to be and not necessarily being true to who they are. And so this was a kid who, like they are in elementary school, where everybody is the way that they are because they don't know anything else, because you're very true to who you are because that's the only thing you know. And Zeke was one of those people who never quite got into that facade thing, because that's all he knows is he can only be himself. So some of the exploratory drawings and expressions, I think, are very important to get into with drawing, so you get an idea, especially in pitches like this where you're trying to understand who that character is. And these were some illustrations done by a good friend, Tim Sabo, who is fantastic, and you should look up his work.
Yeah.
So it's SZABO, Tim Sabo, and I was able to copyright Tim's work, but you can see his TS right here. I always like to give credit where credit's due. So he had another piece in here of the basement. So he lives in an old nuclear town. And so his room is actually the fallout shelter underneath the place. And so
that would have been a cool bedroom.
That's awesome.
Right. So he lives in the fallout shelter, and this is his little computer that is a sentient thing. His is his neighbor, Susie, who has a little Shiba Inu dog, which I might take another pass at the design of that Shiba Inu, because I think it could be made to be even cuter, but Shiba Inus are really cute dogs. Anyways, so she's sort of like the super spy intel gatherer to the undercover agent, sort of, where she's actually in elementary school, but it's so boring there for her that she sneaks out and just turns up in places just randomly, popping out of vents and grates, and secretly inside somebody's locker or whatever. This is one of the. She also has one of those hoverboards that she is souped up that goes really, really fast. So this is one of the episodes where they're surrounded by sugar-addled zombie kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the family, because you have to have some backing behind that. And I kind of get tired of the trope of cartoon characters only having one parent.
Yeah.
But maybe one of these will tragically die. I don't know.
They all get wiped out on a bus, and he becomes Batman, the real detective.
Right. So, and then this is the nemesis, the self-proclaimed nemesis, who's actually slightly younger than Zeke, but is in high school because he's skipped ahead. And his social skills are extraordinarily bad. And he's the child of rather well-to-do parents and who neglect him all the time. So he acts out to try and get attention, but doesn't necessarily think that manipulating people is a bad thing. So he's always trying to mess with, the town. And then when he gets a hold of, figures out who this Zeke guy is, he's found somebody with whom to match wits.
So he's his Moriarty, huh?
Sort of, yeah.
I love it.
But not necessarily in the Moriarty sense, where Moriarty has his own ends that he's trying to accomplish, and Holmes just sort of gets in the way of that. His is more of I'm going to see if I can manipulate this whole situation. I want to see what he's going to do if I poke him the right way,
Yeah.
So, and these are their two computers. They're actually two parts of the same machine. And that's, and then these are just little sketches and things of other characters within the world of Zeke Polka. And then episodes and things like that. So, yeah.
I love seeing the whole pitch together and understanding how you develop the characters and kind of lay out the whole storyline and backgrounds. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
And I love seeing the variation in the character designs and, bringing it full circle, all that about showing the different facial expressions, all that stuff, because it becomes like a model sheet, right, for the animation.
Yeah. I mean, that's how all the old animation sheets were formed, were just from animation drawings that they just compiled on one page.
Looks great.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I really hope that takes off somewhere. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's I've always got 5 or 6 pitches in the wings. But and it's one of those things where for a long time I was totally just terrified that somebody was gonna steal my work or whatever and profit thereby. But that fear has become less and less as I realized, I've still got a lot in the tank. So there's something to be said for not wanting to be stolen from, but there's always something to be said for if you are creative, then you will continue to be creative, and that won't stop. You'll just keep producing, more and more new stuff.
Someone once told me, it says, if you never share your idea, no one will ever have, no one will ever
see it.
Ever.
Yeah, you got to take a chance and get it out there.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Who?
Was it Kunkel said that? Because he said that to me.
Kunkel said that a couple of times. So
Mike Kunkel, that guy is a master of expressions.
Oh yeah.
His stuff is very, very expressive.
So a lot of good stuff in there.
Well, you guys, this has been a treat. Thanks for getting together and chatting and drawing today. This has been fun.
No, it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This has been fun.
We do have one final question.
Yeah?
Yeah. We ask everybody the same question, and so it's your turn. Why do you make art?
I make art because it's a creative release for me, first of all. But I like making people laugh, really.
Entertaining people.
Yeah, I like entertaining people. That's and maybe that's a shallow thing to say, but it's the truth.
Well, and I think that kind of lends credence to the idea that to entertain people, you got to get it out there. You can't hide it somewhere. Got to let people see it.
Stop hiding it. Stop hiding it, man.
I'm keeping it all inside. I'm afraid to get.
You gotta let it out, brother. Let it out.
I just saw something of yours on Some Good News Network.
Yeah,
Good News Network. So I mean,
is that still around?
Well, they're not making new episodes, but it lives on YouTube land.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fantastic. Way to go, man.
I had a lot of fun with that. That was a really fun experience. I'm glad Mr. Krasinski let me play along.
Oh, sure. I mean,
now that you know him name by name basis.
Yeah, I still call him Mr.
It's not like he's hanging out on the weekends with Johnny and Emily.
Yeah, we're good friends now. We
6 feet apart, brother. 6 feet apart.
I mean, talk about your, creative things to do, right? All of Hollywood shuts down, so you start a newscast in your den.
Well, that's definitely the byproduct of this entire experience that I'm really excited to see. Is there are lots of creative people out there doing creative stuff, and we didn't have time for it before, maybe, but now we're doing it, and I think that's admirable.
Oh, I love it. And it's part of me wishes I'd taken much more advantage of this time, to work on artistic things, but life gets in the way in at some junctures, and you do what you can, but just as long as you just keep being creative, and hopefully you'll find some way to be creative and pay your bills at the same time. And that's one of the great things I think a few of us have been able to accomplish, is being able to do this sort of work for a living. And that's something to be very grateful for, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yep. And that is the holy grail and why we do it. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for your words of wisdom. Thanks for playing along. This has been fun, hopefully informative to those that stuck around and listened and watched the whole thing. So that was our chance to sign off. So thanks for coming, everybody. See you later. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Bye. Take care, you guys, all out there in the internet land.
Thanks for having us.
All right. See you later. See you next
time. Hope your eyeballs aren't totally scarred for life after watching this.
That's right. All right. Signing off.